I'm Sara Khan. I'm a biology major, as most of us are. I'm thinking pediatric neurology or psychiatry. Anything that has to do with kids, I'm in. And I guess to sum up my MCAT experience, Anki, Anki, textbooks, practice tests.
My name is Emma Day. I'm also a biology major, and I don't know what I want to be yet, but I guess I'll figure out starting next year. And my MCAT experience, also Anki, practice questions, and yeah, that's basically it.
I'm Adeline. I'm also a biology major. Just keeping an open mind for wherever I end up. Great. Just like my MCAT summary, if I could just sum it up, I would say lots of videos. I actually really didn't even like Anki that much, contrary to the two prior, and then lots of practice tests and questions.
I'm Blake Williams. I'm also a biology major. My hope is I'm going to Neo Med next year. I plan on doing family care as my specialty, I guess. But as for my MCAT experience, I didn't use Anki either. I found the books more helpful. As soon as school ended, and we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but I got sort of really deep into the books, and that helped me a ton, just going over that content again.
I'm Adil. I'm biology pre-med, C3 in the backmed program, hopefully going to Neomed, and I want to be a doctor. So for MCAT, what I did, Anki, UWorld, practice tests, and took the exam. That's it.
Hi, I'm Sanat. I'm a biology major. For my MCAT books, no Anki, no UWorld, there's MCAT review sheets. Use them thoroughly. And obviously 6 practice tests, and yeah, those are the steps to success. So I think the way it starts for everybody is you have a plan and then the plan screws up, so you have to make another plan, right? I started in the winter. I did work hard in the winter. I took 3 weeks. I went 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the local library, and I grinded through the books. Biology, Gen Chem, Psych Soc, Biochem. Went through those 4 books, and then we had scheduled a practice exam in winter. I think it was the beginning of January. That helped a lot. That said, is my strategy working or is it not? And from there, I planned to do studying the spring semester. I didn't do anything. Things came up. It just got weird. And then into the summer, took 2 weeks off. I was really totally out of it. And then starting mid-June to July, the grind started again. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Mostly, I started with another practice test. My practice test score went down 7 points from the one I took in January because I wasn't studying for like 7 months. And so that was kind of a wake-up call. And I just went through the MCAT review sheets. It's like basically a 92-page document that has pretty much everything that's covered in the Anki. It's made by the same dude that made the Anki. And so by going through that daily and then going through the 6 practice exams, my scores went back up like 13 points. And by the end of that process, the average of those scores was exactly my MCAT exam score. So I think by going through that process, and one thing I want to add, I know a lot of people talked about Anki. Anki is just spaced repetition, right? So when you go through, you're studying for physiology, you study an hour a day of the content 3 weeks before the test, you're going to be pretty prepared for the test. Anki is the same thing. It's just a little machine that, blurts out, you got to do 20 things every day, and it makes you disciplined. If you're able to keep that discipline for yourself, you can use the review sheets. For me, it's on and off. Sometimes I'm disciplined, other times I'm totally out. So it's really about how you're able to do it for yourself and make your own plan.
All right, yeah, for me, I started the second half of the winter break, like the last week and a half. My cousin, he took like the MCAT before, and he like sent me everything he did. And he was like, read the books, do the psych document and everything. I was like, I'll try that. I had the Princeton books. I started with the biochem book, okay? Read through that. I was like, okay, I didn't really get anything from that, but like, I'll go through it again, okay? And then I started the 300-page psych doc, and then I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So then I went and downloaded the Miles Down deck for Anki, yeah, and then that, like, I slowly started doing section by section. It was like slow at first, and this was like after winter break had finished, obviously, because yeah, I didn't get through much during the winter. But yeah, I started like reading through the Miles Down Anki deck, and it was like slow at first, like maybe like 100 cards a day, like from all sections combined was 100 cards. And then slowly, like I started picking that up, and then I was actually like memorizing everything. Like I was understanding everything, not understanding like memorizing, but then when I got to UWorld, that's where I started building an understanding, because you have everything memorized, and then you can apply that to the actual questions. So yeah, I started doing that. Once school's finished, like I started using UWorld only, and then yeah, I did the practice test. The average of my practice test was my actual score on the MCAT. So yeah, it's overall a solid study plan, I believe.
First, I just want to preface by saying you're going to see different study methods from each of us. So I mean, I think the best thing to say is you got to find what works for you and what's going to help you get the best score, obviously. But I'll tell you what I did, and I also want to preface that by saying I don't necessarily say it's the best thing to do by any means what I did. But I had so many aspirations to study during the school year, but whenever you're in biochem or organic or whatever, it just doesn't work. You know, you're trying to get that 4.0 GPA and stuff. And so basically I made it through the spring semester before the summer. I took my MCAT, and then I was like, okay, now's the time. Like I did nothing. I did nothing before that summer break when I took the MCAT. I took it at the end of June. But every day I studied for 4 hours. I made a 4-hour window, and I said for 4 hours I'm going to give my life to the MCAT. And so I read through all the books. It took about a month to do that with that 4-hour window. And then I would also do the Jack Weston CARS passages every single day, because they do a daily passage. And the one thing really, I would say that the content review in that short amount of time, it did work. I got the score I wanted, so I wouldn't necessarily change how I did that. However, I wish I would have spent more time in the earlier days doing CARS, because you really have to build a CARS mindset going into that, sort of, because it's high level reading, high level understanding, and I'd say that was my worst section on the MCAT, and I just felt like because I didn't prepare properly for it. But that was about my MCAT experience.
So my studying didn't really start until I took the practice test in January, and that was kind of like this is coming up, I should probably start studying. And so I started looking at stuff throughout the spring semester, but like we've seen a trend, did not happen all that much because school takes over. And then school ended, and I took a little bit of a break. I was traveling places, and then I came back and like, well, it's getting really close, because I originally had my MCAT scheduled for the end of May, but then I decided that it was better for me to push it back towards the end of June, and so that's what I did. And for like my preparation, I have the books, looked through the books, didn't really like the books. I don't really learn by reading, I found out. I'm more of a video person, and that's where Khan Academy came into play. I watched like all of their videos, and I loved it. And another thing is I'm not the biggest morning person, and I think that's something to like talk about, because you're going to see all these people who are like, oh, I study from 8 to 4. But no, I always studied from like 1 to 9. So I just found a schedule that worked better for me. I found that I learned better at night, and that's okay. And Anki, I found that I really didn't like it because I was just memorizing the cards and not the content. And then back to the videos. After I watched the videos and learned the content, my favorite thing to do was to teach it, because you know stuff if you can teach it. So I would teach it to my dogs, and they're so smart now. But so that's like my biggest piece of advice, is like finding what works for you.
Okay, so for me, I took Christmas break to like put a plan together, and I made my spring semester super light with the idea that I'd start studying. But I think throughout the spring semester, the only things I looked through was biochem, Anki cards, and I did the CARS practice test for Gold Standard Kaplan, because I took that MCAT seminar, which I personally didn't find helpful, but I would say that taking the CARS practice test throughout that semester really helped. And I didn't really start fully studying until maybe finals was over, and I took a month to do content review where I only looked through Anki, and Khan Academy videos are also really nice for me. And then I took my first practice test maybe like end of May, which I wouldn't recommend. I definitely would take it a bit earlier just so you know where you're at. But I took the AMC practice tests. And they also have question banks, which were pretty helpful for me. And Khan Academy also has a condensed document that's 93 pages, which helped me for Psych Soc. But yeah, my biggest recommendation would just be to use your time wisely. I think what made me kind of procrastinate was trying to do so much in the beginning. But I just recommend even just a little bit early on really makes a big difference.
So the way that I started, I fumbled a little bit. I tried to read through the 300-page doc like it was nothing, like it was a novel. It didn't work. And then I tried to do a little bit of Anki just out of the gate. Also didn't work. So winter break rolls around. Wait, is January before or after winter break?
After.
After. Okay, cool. Winter break rolls around and I start reading the Princeton books. And when I read something, I read it, I highlight it, I annotate it, and then I draw out all the procedures and all the formulas. So that took me winter break, spring break, and a little bit into the summer. So that it did not take me a month. It took me a while. And then I also took that MCAT in January, which helped create a baseline idea for where I'm at. And then, once I finished all the books, that was stage 1. And then stage 2 started, as soon as summer started, I was off to the races. I went to every single coffee shop in Akron, and I was just I tried UWorld for a little bit, wasn't for me. So I tried something called Blueprint, which is similar to UWorld, but it has a lot of different features. It basically is a practice test software. So I did UWorld in tandem with Anki for Psych and Soc. And then I took the test, and I did okay. So now I'm here.
Okay, awesome. Couple things I heard that I'll just kind of call out. So Blake, I think you said you studied 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
Sanat was 8 or 9 hours a day. So I mean, that's a big difference right there. But I would guess that there is some knowledge of the self, right? Like how long can you focus? I mean, those are long days.
Yeah.
So maybe the question in all of that is, did you break up some of those long days? How did you have the stamina to study for those of you who did even long chunks of any kind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing is, it depends on the score you want. And it does start with that because for us, it was a 500. That's a 50th percentile. That means you're failing the test, right? Even though for us, it's a lot, right? This is a very difficult test. But for you guys, and as the cohorts move on, it's 506 to get past the master's program into straight into Neomed. That makes it harder. If it was a 506, it just means that the hours you're putting in are more and more. I think for me, if I calculated the hours I'm putting in, 450, right? And so you can split that up. If I was a smart person, right, I would have split that up in the spring. I would have tried to do maybe 10 hours a week, right? And split it up into the spring, and then I had pretty light summer weeks and then winter break. But the thing is, it's different for everybody. I was able to cram in 9 hours a day for 6 days a week, kind of break on Sunday and rinse and repeat for 3 weeks, take spring off and do it again in the summer. But it was hard. It was very, very difficult. It was just life draining. It was terrible. But it also really contributed to a very good score on the MCAT. And I would say if you're aiming for very high scores, like 520s, it's completely different. There are things that I skipped completely. I didn't read half the OChem book. I didn't go over any UWorld questions because for me, just miles down, plus the books, plus having the practice tests, I think very solidly, if you do that consistently, 510, 515 is within reach for sure. But if you want to get anything 520 plus, you need to do everything everybody just said and more. And so that kind of puts in perspective just what do you want out of this and how do you want to split it up for yourself?
For me, as I said, I didn't start till after the spring semester, so I had to be realistic with myself a little bit. I mean, I probably tried the first day to study as much as I could, but I mean, the 4 hours was even tough. And by the 4th hour, I'm sitting there like, I can't even focus anymore. I have to be done for the day, or at least take a very long break. So what I ended up doing was saying, okay, I know I can do 4 hours a day, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do the 4 hours. But even how I got through that, it was like I'd get through a chapter and be like, all right, time for some golf. Or like time for a snack or something. Like you just have to give yourself little 5-minute breaks in between the chapters or whatever, so you can give your brain a rest. But also, something I would stress for me, and why this is what I attribute my good score to the most, is because since I basically did not wait till the summer of to start studying, I made like school in the classes I was currently in my life. Like, I didn't just try in my classes to get the minimum A grade and to just understand it in the sense to just get the grade. I left every class with I felt like I knew every concept from that class. So then when it came time for content review, it was truly review. Like, it was actually like I was just seeing everything again because I already understood it. So then I only had to do 4 hours a day because I got through those books in a month and I felt like I had a good grasp on everything and I got a great score. So it went really well for me. I would just say that, really focus in your classes and it will pay off during the review time.
I found that dividing my days up in an hourly basis was not for me. If I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to study for 5 hours today, I would do a lot less by the time the 5th hour came up, like you said. So the way that I did it was that I gave myself tasks. Like, okay, I have to finish 2 chapters, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this much Anki, and I couldn't go to bed until it was all done. So that, first of all, forced me to be faster because a girl wants to sleep. And I couldn't drag it out for too long. And I made sure to have everything done no matter how long it took me, because different things take different amounts of time. It might take me 4 hours to read 2 chapters one day, or it might take me 30 minutes. So I think it was more helpful to split that up by goals so that I knew by the time the week was up, I would have this entire book finished, no matter how long it took me per day. So that sort of gave me a little more peace of mind. So, oh my gosh, I tried so many things, but for that January test, I think it was great to get it early in the year, because when you hear the MCAT, you've been hearing the word MCAT ever since you decided to become a pre-med major. You've been hearing about this monstrous 7-hour exam that is going to determine your fate for the rest of your career. And it is terrifying. It is like this looming monster in the distance. And so when you finally go in and you do your first one, you're like, that was basically an ACT on steroids. It was fine. It wasn't that bad. 7 hours doesn't feel like that long when you're in it. It really doesn't, because you got your adrenaline pumping, you're thinking about the questions, you're not seeing the time fly by. So just the fear factor of it, by getting done with that exam in January, really helpful, honestly. And also getting to know the features of the exam, like the blue screen, how to highlight, how to underline. Things like, not underline, strike out, but things like that. It was nice to get familiar with the features. And I will say, for other practice test software, they all look pretty similar. They all have the blue screen, but I would say that it depends on the question material the most. Like, what actual questions are they presenting to you? You have AAMC, which obviously is the most realistic in terms of what questions you're going to see on the MCAT. But one thing that I disliked about the AAMC questions, including the section exams and the question bank, is that the explanations were scanty. We're talking like 5 lines of explanation. I needed more than that. I needed to know exactly why I got this wrong and how I could never get it wrong again. So that is where Jack Weston came in handy for me, because they actually have explanations in tandem with all of those question banks, section exams, even the full lengths. They have whole explanations that are a lot more long and thorough, and they have pictures. And when I discovered that felt like a gold mine. So it definitely increased the benefit that I got from the AMC exams. Then I tried UWorld and Blueprint. I don't know, did any of you guys do Blueprint?
I did not.
That's something my sister used back in the day. It was called something else. But I did a free trial on UWorld first. And UWorld was great. It had flashcard feature. It was very detailed explanations, almost too detailed, because I wanted to read every single explanation for things I got wrong and right. I wanted to make sure I knew everything I could. And reading through all those explanations would make it impossible to review any exams. It would just be way too tough. So Blueprint gave me more peace of mind because it had that detailed explanation, but a little shorter. It was more manageable. It had flashcard features. It had everything else that the MCAT had. And when you did the first exam, you did like the little diagnostic exam to see where you're at. It would even suggest passages to you, like new passages and new sections for you to try based on what you found most difficult. So it had a lot of semantics and a lot of really cool software features. So I definitely recommend Blueprint for sure.
I did take the January test, which I guess I would recommend, because something you don't think about while you're studying is the test stamina that you need. I will say that the practice tests I took at home were a lot harder than I thought taking the actual test, because the actual test you're like really scared. you're so focused. Whereas at home, I got more distracted, so it was a lot harder. But I think I would have liked to know that I needed that test stamina early on. So I think taking that test in January would probably have been helpful.
Yeah, I took the test in January, and definitely I agree that like it was very nice to have like those testing conditions and just be able to like see what that's like sit there for 7 hours. You have breaks, but like they're not long. I would definitely recommend that. And then yeah, taking my practice test at home. Oh my gosh, my dogs were like going crazy. I keep talking about them, I'm so sorry, I don't know why. But like they made it so hard to focus. So while I was just kind of doing that for the experience at that point, it was definitely really nice to have that test taking experience, like the practice one.
I think that the exam in January is very important, actually, just because, like they have stated already, it's just important to kind of get an idea of what you're facing early on, because then you can kind of dictate your study plan based off how the test actually is, instead of just studying based off this image that you have of you know what it's like at that point. So then you can base your study plan off of that. But yeah, I'd recommend to take it.
Contrary to everybody else, I did very well on it, and then I didn't study at all for many months. I completely blew it off, and then I realized I might need to study. But I think that's something a little controversial is that, remember the ACT, SAT, right? I've been looking at the data, and this is kind of just something weird, is that the highest SAT, ACT scores correlate almost, it's a linear regression. It correlates almost exactly to high MCAT scores. And it's because the people that take ACTs and SATs very well, right? So much of that test, the way it's done, the multiple choice format, especially the car section, is almost bar for bar, word for word, the exact same as ACT reading. If you took a high schooler and you put him in the MCAT, who got a 36 on the ACT, would absolutely ace the car section, because it's the same thing. And so when you hear us sitting up here talking about our own experiences, I really encourage you to look back at your own test-taking experiences, right? BACMed has a cutoff for, 27 ACT, 28, to get into BACMed, right? But let's think about it. The person who got a 28 compared to the person that got a 36 on ACT reading, if you got a 28, you got to do a lot more work. You got to put in a lot more hours to get to the same place as the person that got a 36 on MCAT cars, right? And so that's something you got to think about yourself. Are you a good test taker? Did you ace the ACT? Did you ace the SAT? Or was that something that you struggled with? If so, make sure you take that exam in winter, because it's a slap in the face. Like, shoot, if I fail this, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm screwed, right? And so that's something I think is very helpful. The other thing is, I think for me, being able to go through and see exactly where I needed a lot of help. The psych-soc document, the 300-page document, I think I started, I was like 6 points lower on psych-soc. I went over the document. I gained huge on psych-soc, and come MCAT day I did very well, because something like that is just memorization, right? And I think it's easy, and it was for me when I was in that seat. I was like, shoot, this is like some complex exam. It's really difficult. It's just completely nebulous. It's a game of chance. It's not. It's not a game of chance. Anybody that tells you it's a game of chance or it's luck is completely wrong. There's no luck here, especially in something like psych-soc. It's straight up, how hard do you memorize? How hard do you want to work to memorize a bunch of random gibberish facts that have no bearing whatsoever? But it's like every other test you're going to take. The entire bachelor's degree is just, are you willing to sit down, memorize a bunch of useless, because in medical school, you're going to sit down for 4 years and memorize a bunch of useful. So
I would also want to add in, on Amazon, you can get the same exact pens and the same exact notepad that they use in the actual exam. I got that from the get-go. I brought it to the January test, if you remember, and it really does help simulate the exam. And also, if you're a person who's going to wear headphones, because they have those big, clunky silencer headphones, practice wearing headphones in your practice exams. Bring your own, because oh my gosh, those things squeeze your head. It's like I can't think because I have 2 cement blocks on my ears. It was so uncomfortable. So definitely practice, simulate that part too.
One of my first practice tests I did in the summer after I went through all the books, and like not a score I would ever think I would ever get in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm Albert Einstein. Like, I'm ready to go. And then I took a second practice test and it did not go as well. So it, like they say, I think they say it's an average.
Yeah.
Right? It's an average.
Yeah, and you like to take it in like the most realistic format. Like I didn't take breaks, I did it word for word because of that, if you don't take it in a realistic format, the averages are totally whack. Don't trust them whatsoever. But because I took them in a very realistic format, I think what they say is like plus or minus 3 points is your actual score, and it was above 3 points was my actual score.
And it actually depends also on what software you use, because Princeton, for example, is notoriously harder than the actual exam, the Princeton practice exams. And this is from Reddit. This is a Reddit source. But when I was like trying to figure out, okay, is my Princeton score like realistic? They said like plus or minus 7 for Princeton, because Princeton is very, far removed. And then Blueprint, it was around a little less than that, but still more difficult. And then AMC is obviously the most realistic. The one thing about taking exams that are harder than the actual MCAT is that you can expect that your actual MCAT score is going to be a lot higher. So if you can't do AAMC, you finished all the tests and you don't want to buy more because it's super expensive, but you have Blueprint or you have UWorld, don't be afraid to do those too. Just understand that your score is probably higher than you think.
I took all 3 of my grades, but I wanted to mention this just because I thought it was interesting. The 2 little short breaks, all I did was sit there in the room. Like the lady would come over, she would check me out, and I just sit in my chair. I don't know if you're allowed to do that technically, but she let me. So I just sat there and stared at my screen and just kind of stretched out my legs under the table because I was too scared to leave. And then my lunch, I took my lunch and I made it really short because I was once again really scared. And kind of contrary, I did not want to take it with any friends. I tried to make sure there was nobody there I knew because I feel like that just really amped up my test taking, this is the real deal, I need to do really well on this. So I guess whatever your personal preference is on that note.
So there's 2 things I'd say. The other thing I thought of too,
Please.
was that not to focus on the other people leaving for their breaks. Because not only are they going to finish at different times than you, some people work really fast, some people like to take the whole time. It means nothing. All that matters is if you get the question correct or not. Don't worry about the time. But also, there's people there taking tests that aren't the MCAT. So people might be going home before, 3 hours before you go home. So you just can't get stressed about that because their test has nothing to do with your test.
Me personally, I just use the AMC 6 because, like I said, I think the AMC is the gold standard, right? Everybody here has done the AMC exams, the 6 of them. It's maybe $300 if you buy them outright, but you have to buy them, everybody does, and it's very helpful, right? I think, like Sara mentioned, when you're going through the exam, if you have the explanations, just reading through the explanations, understanding why every single question was wrong or right with Jack Weston will take a day. And so if you just take, that's 12 days, right? 1 day for each exam, 1 day for each review. I think that's plenty, right? If you want more, Princeton, all these other sites are there, but I got a very good score just by using AMC, no UWorld, no Anki. A lot of the MCAT resources are free. I'm a big time Reddit guy. I love Reddit. I think everybody has seen the MCAT Reddit. I post on there sometimes, but I'm not going to tell you what I post.
Later.
I think that the free resources, the 300-page document, the 92-page miles down document, if you use those and you use the tests, I think that's everything you need, plus the books, right? I'm definitely a believer that you don't need to shell out $1,000, $1,500, because I have friends who have taken, a $10,000 MCAT course. And the thing is, it's all about discipline, right? It's just like OChem or any of these other classes, right? If you want to get an A in OChem, you can get a tutor, you can have somebody try and teach you OChem, but at the end of the day, are you willing to spend 9 hours a day for 7 weeks listening to Dr. Norris ramble on and on about OChem to get that A, right? It's the same thing with the MCAT. you know by now, look at your classes, right? Look at how you did on your classes. Like if you're, so on your classes, maybe you need to think, I need somebody to discipline me. Maybe I need a prep course, right? Maybe I need something that could give me a schedule and keep me on track. If you're doing really well, you're really disciplined, you know that you can space yourself out. That's the thing. For me, it was OChem 2. After OChem 2, I kind of figured out, I'm able to prep myself, I'm able to discipline myself, space it out, I'm good. But if I, had not done so well in OChem 2, I definitely would have considered getting that prep course because in the end, it's a good investment. Physics is one thing where I completely went off the beaten path because there's a 550-page Kaplan Princeton physics book, right? It is massive. And for me, I was just like, this is just so in-depth, right? What I did was I used my physics exams from Dr. Prio, Dr. Balash, Physics 1, Physics 2. I did not use a formula sheet. And so I just went through the exams without a formula sheet. And those of you who are in physics, you know how hard the exam would be without a formula sheet, right? You'd have to memorize all the kinematics, all the random equations that you use. But the thing about MCAT physics is that it's really not that hard, right? Beyond the classroom physics, like the physics that you learn here is MCAT physics. There's nothing above and beyond. And if it is above and beyond, the time that you would need to understand it is far too much. It's way beyond your level, right? It's like 525 level. So if you're aiming for 515, go over your old physics exams, use those, memorize the formula sheet, and if you can do that, you are pretty solid for physics. Like you will get 120 to 126 plus. I can say that pretty confidently because if you know the formulas, you know how to apply them, that's all you need for physics. The other thing I want to say about goals is I didn't use Anki, right? I didn't have that set goal, but I did have kind of an overarching goal. I was going to take my MCAT June 24th. The scores come back July 28th. We had an India trip planned July 31st. My grandparents are getting very old, right? And so, my goal was if I don't pass the MCAT first attempt, I'm probably never going to see them again, And so that kind of motivation, being able to be a present brother to my little 7th grade brother, those things really made it so that failure was really not an option for me. It was not something that I even considered. Like, once I took the exam, I didn't study any MCAT again because I was very confident that that was it. That was all I'd done. Because if you prepare yourself hard enough, your averages are high enough, there's no stress, there's no uncertainty. And that's why I felt so confident. I didn't schedule another exam because I knew the averages, the probability, the statistics, they even out.
For me, I'd say just stay consistent on it and also give yourself time to relax and stuff. So for me, in the last few weeks towards the MCAT, it's it's during the summer, it's more dense studying. During the night, almost every single night, I'd make plans with my friends. We'd go out maybe an hour or two, go do something fun. So then the next day I wake up and then I had fun the day before. I had more motivation to study for that day. And just take it one step at a time. Don't crush it all together. Because some people, you might just be aiming for the minimum score, which you should never do because you should just aim for the stars because what you're investing in isn't a good score. It's investing in the confidence that you won't have to take the exam again. So, you might end up with, let's say you're aiming for 506, you aim higher, you get out of the exam, you got the 506, you don't care about what score you got, you just know you got above the 506, you're not scared, maybe I need to reschedule this exam, maybe I need to do something, and you worry for a whole month about that. I think you might even need to retake the exam.
I think for me, I don't know if I'm wired a little differently, but for me the 500 wasn't motivational. It didn't get me out of bed every morning because they're in the real world, outside of back then. Right? Every single one of those guys at Neomed is not walking in there with a 500. They're walking in there with a 512, 515, 520s. These are very, very intelligent kids. And one day in the future, when you want to fight for a residency and surgery and plastics and ortho and neuro that I know you guys want to go into, you need to be a top dog. And the MCAT is your opportunity to be a top dog. And this is your chance, right? And I think that was my motivation, where I would walk in there and I would say, this is my opportunity to really show myself, right? Not anybody else, right? I didn't go put my score on a billboard. I just, for myself, right? Looking at myself, going into Neomed, not with the idea, oh shoot, these kids are better than me, I don't know, I kind of slid in, I'm just, I got in through the back of my program. No, I got in here, that's my right. I got in here by my own way because I worked hard. I'm gonna work hard in Neomed. I'm gonna work hard in the medical school. I'm gonna get the residency I want. And that's something that motivated me. And the last thing is family. My family was always there. My family was my other motivation, and being able to go to medical school and being able to be there for them and being able to spend the rest of my summer, the rest of my senior year, go home every weekend, spend the summer with them. That was a huge motivation. I didn't want this silly test to take over my life, right? It's just a hurdle. In fact, it's the smallest hurdle that you'll face. Step 1, step 2, massive exams are coming. This is just a little stepping stone.